We are very happy and honored to have with us today Dr. Alexander Berzin. He is a Buddhist scholar, and perhaps the one thing that all of us would immediately associate with him is the fact that he is the official translator for the Dalai Lama, and he has spent most of his life in India, in the ashram of the Dalai Lama in Dar es Salaam, is it? Dharamsala. And there are some vibrations going on in Malaysia that we will have the great honor to receive the Dalai Lama in this country. So we have in fact perhaps an emissary coming before him to lay the path. And some of you may have received the notice earlier that he was supposed to talk about Buddhism and Hinduism. But we thought that perhaps we would go into something much more deeper about Buddhism, and the subject he addresses is on karma and causality. He gave a very fascinating, he has given a number of discourses while he's here, but I was present at the session we had in the Pure Life Society, and we found that Dr. a highly learned person in Buddhism, and those of you who missed that session missed a very interesting session because we had two very distinguished Buddhists, Arabama Swami Dhammananda, and both from different schools, were giving different reputations, and so that helped us in fact to understand a bit more about Buddhism.
Thank you very much for that very kind introduction. I'm very happy and honored to be with all of you here this evening. I'd like to start the way that I usually begin any type of explanation, which is the way that in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition we begin a meditation session, and that's to focus on the breathing. And what we do is we breathe normally through our nose, not particularly quickly or slowly, but just normally, and focus on the sensation of the breath going in and out of our nostrils, and at the same time we count the breaths. And so out and in we count as 1, out and in 2, out and in 3, like that, up to 11. And this is usually repeated 2 or 3 times. The idea is to make a space in between what we had been doing and what we're about to do, because our energy very often and our thoughts are quite involved with what we had been doing before, either sitting here and being involved in the activities that have been going on so far, or being involved in our normal daily affairs, or a telephone conversation, or whatever. And it's not so easy to disengage our energy from what was going on before and to get into what's coming next. And a way of being able to do that more clearly is to make a clean space in between, and that's done by focusing on the breathing and counting. It's difficult for us to hold several things in our mind at the same time, and so if we focus on the breathing and the counting, it's difficult to also have other worries and concerns going on in our mind at the same time, and so it works in that way to make the space. But if we do it for too long, then we get bored with it, of course, and our mind wanders off again. So that's why it's only done up to 11, 2 or 3 times. And in the Buddhist tradition, this is the technique which is used for relaxing, for being able to calm down and to disengage our mind from worries and anxieties. And then, based on this more relaxed state, we can get involved in doing more positive and constructive types of things. And so relaxation is never just sitting and spacing out and being unclear, but rather it's to calm down through focusing on the breathing with a very clear mind. Then with a clear mind we can go into doing more positive actions. So let's do that. We'll breathe out and in, count 1, out and in 2, like that, up to 11, and we'll repeat that twice. And as I say, just breathe normally. A way of getting our energy going in a positive way before we begin anything by setting an intention that I'm going to try to concentrate, and I'm going to try to listen to these explanations with a motivation. And the motivation is to try to learn more about the various techniques, the explanations for what happens in my own life, so that I can work to overcome my problems more easily, and to overcome my limitations and realize my potentials, so that I can be of benefit, more benefit to others. This evening we're going to be talking about karma, and particularly the idea of karma as is presented in Buddhism. And everybody wants to be happy. Nobody wants to be unhappy. This is one of the basic principles that's true. But unfortunately, a lot of us, most of us, don't really know what are the methods that are going to bring us happiness. Because we try various things, but it just produces more problems for us. We want to be happy, and we go out and we try to act in a certain way towards others to win friends, but then the more friends that we have, we find that we don't have so much time. They make so many demands on us. We get more and more problems coming up with them, and the pursuit of happiness becomes completely involved in other types of things, and we create more problems for ourselves. We have a lot of unhappiness, a lot of difficulties, and often these come up because of our behavior in terms of acting compulsively or impulsively. We may have a lot of friends, but if our behavior with them is very compulsive and impulsive, like we're always arguing with them, or we're always making different demands, and then they make demands on us, and it gets to be very tense. This type of situation produces difficulty in our lives. And this is really what karma is talking about. Karma is talking about impulsive behavior, or impulses, when we just act in ways in which we have no control. We're not really thinking, just impulses come to our head to say something or do something, and we just act it out. Now, the Buddha taught that there were four true things, four facts seen as true by any highly realized person. One of them was problems that we all face, problems of frustration, unhappiness, these sort of things, and things happening to us that we don't want, or we want things to happen and they don't happen, all these sort of things, and that our problems have causes. It's not that our problems have no cause, that it just happens to us for no reason at all, but they have causes, and it's possible to get rid of the problems. It's possible to stop them. It's not that we're condemned to having to experience problems forever, and there's a way to actually do it, and the way to do it is to follow a true pathway, which is to eliminate the cause. If we get rid of the cause of our problems, we get rid of the problems themselves. And so one of the causes then of our problems is karma. It's acting impulsively. But if we understand karma as a cause for our problems, if we understand that incorrectly, then our idea of whether it can be eliminated or not, or what actually we can do about it, will be quite confused and incorrect. Now, there's a story to illustrate this. There was once a man who had a son, and the son was quite stupid, and the man was having, the father was having a great deal of difficulty finding anyone who would marry the son. And so finally he located a daughter in a village a little bit far away, so they hadn't heard about this stupid boy. And the father said, "We're going to go over to meet the family of this prospective bride, and I want you to try to impress them. And in this family, in their house, they have, when you walk into their house, there's a door sill, this piece of wood on the bottom of the door, which is made out of teak wood. And when you walk into the house, you should say, "Oh, what a wonderful teak wood door sill you have." And then the family will be very impressed at how sensitive you are, how sophisticated, that you can recognize these things, and then they'll agree to letting you marry the daughter of the family. So you have to remember, teak wood door sill. And so the boy said, yes, I can remember. Teak wood, well, what was that? The father said, teak wood door sill. And they kept on making the son rehearse and repeat this expression so that he would remember to say it. And so they go over to this village, and they go to the family, and they're greeted by the parents of the girl, and they invite the son and the father to come into the house for tea, where this teakwood door sill is. And so they go over to it, and the son just steps right over it and walks into the house. And the father starts to get quite nervous that the son forgot. What are we going to do? But the son just smiles at the father, and he wasn't able to say anything. And they sit down, and the mother of the family brings in the tea to serve them, and the mother has a very beautiful china porcelain teapot that she is very proud of and very happy of, that she's going to serve the tea in. And so they go over to pour the tea for the son and this boy, and the boy looks at the woman and smiles, looks over to the father and smiles like an idiot, and winks his eye and says to mother, "Oh, what a wonderful teakwood tea kettle you have." You can imagine the father just wanted to crawl under the table. And like that, if we say that we understand something, but we have a completely confused idea, like this son about the teakwood door sill, then it's not going to be very clear in our minds. We'll get very confused. And so a lot of people have a very strange idea of karma. We tend to think that karma means fate. Somebody is hit by a car, or somebody's business goes badly, and we say, well, tough luck, that's their karma. It's almost like the idea of God's will. And this is not at all the idea of karma that we have in Buddhism, because we're not speaking about fate or destiny, because if we thought that our problems were caused by fate or destiny, then there's really nothing that we could do about them. All we could do is shut up and accept them and hope that maybe they'll go away. But the Buddha taught that when we speak about karma as the cause of our problems, we're speaking about impulses that come to our head. It's it's the impulse that came to our head to cross the street at just that moment when we would be hit by the car, not 5 minutes earlier and not 5 minutes later. Or the impulse that came to our head to make a certain decision in our business, which then cost us losing a great deal of money. And so we're really addressing the whole issue of why do these impulses come to our head to act in a certain way. Because these impulses, very often, we don't even think about them, we just act them out. Now, of course, the big insight that we can get here from Buddhism is that it's not necessary to act out every impulse that comes to our head. That if we did, then sometimes we could get into a lot of trouble. Now, obviously, we've already learned how to do that as we were growing up. We learned how to be toilet trained, hopefully, so that when the impulse comes to our head, then we know that if I just act it out immediately right here, that's not going to be very pleasant. And so we learn to distinguish between certain impulses, which are okay, and constructive, but other impulses which are going to lead to problems, and we differentiate and we can restrain ourselves from acting out the impulses that are just going to cause us trouble. The same thing in terms of just saying anything that comes to our head. As a small child, we just say anything, but sometimes that can be very embarrassing, very difficult. And as we get older, we learn to control ourselves a little bit and see that although we might want to say to somebody, boy, what you just said was stupid, we don't say those things. That is not the way to act with others. And so this is really what karma is talking about. It's talking about these impulses coming to our head and trying to realize that it's not necessary to act them out. Now, and to try to create the situations in which more positive impulses come to our head instead. Now, when we act in a certain way, because the question now is, how do these impulses come about? And when we act in a certain way, when we speak in a certain way, or act or do something physical, or hit somebody, or if we yell at somebody or use cruel language, or when we think in a certain way, like with hatred towards somebody, that builds up a certain amount of potential energy, right? There's a certain subtle energy, there's an impulse of energy that's created with that, and that energy carries on in a very subtle potential form, like when we have real violence towards someone. Likewise, it builds up on a deeper level a tendency and a habit. Like we can think in terms of smoking a cigarette. If I smoke a cigarette, then I build up the potential, there's some potential energy there to smoke another cigarette. And on a deeper level, there's a tendency to continue smoking, and on a even deeper level, there's a habit that is there. And because of these potentials, the potential energy and the tendency and the habit, then later on another impulse is going to come to my head to smoke another cigarette. Or likewise, an impulse could come up for my body to start to get cancer from smoking the cigarettes. The impulses can ripen in many different ways. What happens then is that these things get carried on with our mind stream as it continues in this lifetime and also into future lifetimes, because this very subtle energy gets carried along like a wave that continues with our subtle mind, and also the tendencies and the habits are things which will continue as well. Tendencies and habits are things which are very subtle. It's not like it's something physical in our mind, but it's just like if we ask, what is a habit? I have a habit of eating, taking noodles for breakfast each morning. Now, what actually is that habit? It's not a little bowl of noodles in my head that comes up each morning, and it's not something conscious. I'm not saying eat noodles, eat noodles, eat noodles. It's just that last week I ate noodles, the next morning noodles, the next morning, the next morning, the next morning. Each morning I ate noodles. So what's the habit? The habit is just something that I can infer from all these different instances of experience. Based on the fact that I ate noodles so many days, I can say, I have a habit of eating noodles. There's a tendency of eating noodles, and based on that, I can predict that an impulse is going to come to my head to eat noodles the next day as well. So it's like this, that habits and tendencies, these things, get carried into future lives without there having to be something actual physical that is going there. It's just that there are many instances of similar experience. continuing from one lifetime to a next. And then these potentials and habits and tendencies are going to ripen. And the way that they ripen is according to certain types of laws, certain types of principles. And the first of these is certainty. There's certainty of results. If we act in a destructive way, it builds up a negative potential and causes problems or suffering. If, for instance, I'm always yelling at everyone in my family or trying to be very authoritarian with them, it builds up some negative potential, some resentment, and it could create a problem within the family of there being unhappiness, the children not coming to visit me, these sort of difficulties. If I go around shooting everybody with a gun, then that causes a lot of problems that I could be caught by the police. All sorts of difficult things can happen. Likewise, if we act in a constructive way, that builds up positive potential and is going to result in happiness. If I'm kind towards others, then things will go well in terms of myself, and so on. If I'm helping in terms of society, then that brings about happiness for the other people and eventually brings about happiness for myself as well. Now, there's certainty about this. If we act destructively, it brings about problems. If constructively, it brings about happiness. Now, these things can be, well, first of all, we have to notice that in Buddhism, we're not really speaking in terms of the way that it's usually translated, virtuous and non-virtuous, that if you act non-virtuously, it's a sin and produces suffering, and if you act virtuously, it builds up merit and you get a reward. There's no moral judgment here. It's just simply certain things are constructive, other things are destructive. It's just matter of fact. There's no judgment, there's no guilt, and these sort of things involved. But we can see from these laws of destructiveness results in problems, constructiveness in happiness, that it starts to become a little bit complicated, because at certain times we can act in a destructive way, but for a positive reason. So the classic example is the Buddha in one of his last lifetimes, one of his previous lifetimes, was the captain of a ship. And on this ship there were 500 merchants, and there was an oarsman. And the oarsman was going to kill the 500 merchants. And the Buddha saw that this person was going to do that, and he saw that there was no way in which he could stop this person unless he killed the oarsman. And so the Buddha decided that he would take on himself the consequences of this action and would kill the oarsman in order to save the 500 merchants, and also in order to prevent that oarsman from producing such a terrible action that would cause him a rebirth in one of the worst states, in a hell realm or these sort of things. And so the Buddha did this, and he killed the oarsman. Now, here's an example of a negative action, killing, but with a very positive motivation of wanting to help the 500 people, 500 merchants, and also to help the oarsmen. Now, the motivation resulted in building up a tremendous amount of positive potential so that the Buddha was able to become a Buddha much more quickly. But that action of killing the person was negative. That was destructive. And so that will have a different ripening. And later on, the Buddha had at one time got a splinter, and he was asked, what's the cause for the splinter? And he explained it was because of killing this oarsman at that time. And so in this type of situation, the action of the Buddha was one of being totally willing to take on the negative consequences of killing this person in order to save others. So it's not saying that there's going to be no negative result. If we act destructively, there is a negative result, but we are going to be willing to take that on in order to help others. And so, and in the process of doing that, of course, the consequences are going to be a little bit less. Like we can see that here in our normal circumstances. If there was a person who was shooting everybody with a machine gun in the market, and we were to kill that person in order to stop them, well, in one sense, we would be a hero. But so from our motivation, we would be a hero, but we had, after all, killed this person, and so we're going to have to face all the police interrogations and all the complicated things involved in the legal structure and so on. It's not that only happiness results from this action. So from the action of killing there, we get all the trouble and unpleasantness, but from the motivation, which was to save everybody in the marketplace, we become a hero. So this is this first principle, the certainty of results. If we act in a negative way, that produces unhappiness, problems. If we act in a positive way, it brings about happiness, and we can differentiate between the actual action and the motivation which is involved. Those can have different results. Then there's the increase of the results, which is that, for instance, from a small acorn, of a small seed, a very large tree can grow. So, for instance, if we say some nasty words to somebody, well, that's very small. It could only be a few words, but that's something which can hurt the other person very deeply. If we don't apologize, then they could start to hold a very big grudge. It's going to get worse and worse, and they may then start all sorts of trouble for us and send charms to us and to our family, and all of a sudden we have a huge problem which has grown from just having said a few words to another person. So we can see this from a small seed, from a small action, very large results can happen, whereas likewise in a positive action, we could say just a few words to somebody which could completely change their lives, and all of a sudden encourage them and inspire them to, let's say, join some spiritual group and to work to improve themselves, and then they do a great deal of social work, and all of that could have resulted from just a few kind words. So from a small cause, very large results can follow. Then there's also, if we haven't committed an action, then we won't have to experience the results of it. There was a situation in which there was this queen, and the queen had a large group of attendants, maids who were waiting on her, and they were in a palace, and the palace caught on fire. And even though the queen and these attendants had the ability to be able to escape, to leave the palace, to escape from being burned, nevertheless they weren't able to use their abilities, their powers to leave the palace. They were so, the impulses came to their head to be so confused and so terrified that they all got burnt to death in the palace, except for one maid. And that maid was able to crawl out of a drainage hole in the side of the palace. And so the Buddha was asked, well, why was this so? Why did the queen and all these other attendants, they weren't able to leave the palace? They could have, but they all got burnt to death, but just this one little girl was able to escape. And the Buddha explained that in a previous lifetime, the queen and these maids were had been born together as a group of people, and they had been involved in going to an area where there was some birds' nests and many birds, and they had burnt down the tree and the bushes where these birds had lived. And so as a result of that, then they themselves had to experience being burnt to death in this situation. But that young girl, she wasn't in that group of people, and because she wasn't in that group of people, then she didn't have to die in this fire. She was able to escape. And so it's like that whenever we see situations of, for instance, an airplane crash or a bus crash. Why is it that one or two people are able to walk away without any injury and everybody else gets killed? Why is it that the impulse came to this person's head to go to the toilet in the back of the plane at just that moment when the plane was going to blow up, and because they were in the toilet in the very back, they were able to be saved and everybody else in the front was killed? You know, these sort of things, that's karma. That's an impulse coming to our head to do something which is a result from things of the past. And so if we haven't committed a certain action, then we aren't going to have to experience the results. But also, another law is if we have committed something, then it's not going to just go in vain or disappear, but at some time it's going to ripen. Because often we find the situation that here's somebody who is cheating, who's doing all sorts of nasty things, and yet they seem to be rich, they seem to have happiness. That isn't fair. But karma doesn't ripen instantly like that. If someone has acted negatively, then even though it might not ripen immediately, eventually that will ripen when the causes and circumstances are complete. That's why we have to be aware that there are many, many different impulses, many different potentials, many different habits and tendencies that we've built up from beginningless time. We've had infinite past lives, and in all these lives we've built up all sorts of potentials for all sorts of things to happen to us, both positive and negative, and it very much is dependent on the type of thoughts, the type of actions that are the most dominant in us, and particularly the ones that are most strong at the time of our death, because these are the things that are going to throw us into a future life. We shouldn't think that after we die that we're only going to continue to have better and better rebirths. According to the Buddhist explanation, that's not the case. We can go down just as easily as we can go up. In fact, it's much easier to go down. It's much easier to be reborn as an animal or as a ghost or as some sort of tortured spirit, these sort of things, because most of us act negatively so frequently. And so all the various potentials and things that we have in our mind, it's very important to try to purify or get rid of the negative ones and to try to increase the positive ones, particularly at the time of our death. Because although things will ripen, it's like if we throw a ball up into the air. Now we can say that if I throw the ball up into the air, I can predict that it's going to come back down. But it's not the fate or destiny that it's going to come back down, because I could catch the ball. And so all we can say is that these negative actions are going to ripen unless we do something about it. And it is possible to be able to purify ourselves of these negative potentials. Now, there are certain types of actions which are pointed out as being the most destructive type of actions, which lead to worse types of lives, worse type of rebirths. Depending on the strength of the action, either it could determine the entire rebirth state, or it could just determine the circumstances. Either we could be reborn, let's say, as a dog or an animal or a cockroach. That obviously is a very terrible state, which everybody doesn't like us and wants to just step on us. Or we could be reborn as the pet dog of the Dalai Lama. Now, that's a terrible rebirth state as a dog, but the circumstances of it aren't so bad. So there are two different ways that could be. Likewise, we could be reborn as a human being and be a king, which would be very lovely, or we could be reborn as a human being and be a beggar with leprosy. That's not so nice. So again, depending on the strength of the action, it will either result in the actual rebirth state or the circumstances of a rebirth state. Now, the most destructive actions, there are three of our body, which would be to kill, that's to take the life of others, and to steal, to take what's not given to us, and to indulge in unwise sexual behavior, which would be causing harm by our sexual behavior, like raping, committing adultery, transmitting diseases when we know that that's what can happen, these sort of things. That's very unwise. Then there are four destructive actions of speech that are the most dominant. That would be lying, and then using divisive language that's trying to make people into enemies so that then we can take advantage of them, or if they're already enemies, to make them hate each other even more so that they never get together. Then the third is to use cruel and abusive language, to yell at people, hurt their feelings. And the fourth is to just have idle chatter, which doesn't seem so bad, but actually it's the biggest waste of our time, to just constantly chatter on and on and on and on about nothing. Then there are three most negative ways of thinking, which are to have covetous thinking, which is to think, oh, my neighbor has this or that, I must go out and get that, I must go and try to be better than everybody else, this type of very jealous thinking. And then there's thinking with malice, which is, oh, I hate this person, I have to get even with them, I have to plot to how I'm going to hurt them, this type of thinking. And then the third kind is to think with distorted, antagonistic type of thoughts, which is, I'm right, everybody else is wrong, even though we might be completely wrong, and I'm going to burn everybody at the stake who disagrees with me. So being very antagonistic and wanting to argue and put down anybody else who disagrees with us. You know, like somebody could have stolen something, and we point out to them, oh, you stole this, and the person gets very aggressive and defensive and starts attacking us. What do you mean? You know, you yourself are this or that, and they become very hostile. It's this type of thinking. So these are the most destructive types of actions, and the opposite of them would be to restrain ourselves. What would be constructive is to see that if I were to kill this person or animal or hurt them, that would be very negative, very destructive, and to restrain myself from doing that, or to restrain myself from stealing, because I see that it causes unhappiness, will cause unhappiness in myself as well. Restrain ourselves from these things. Now, in order for these actions that we've done to ripen completely, to have a complete result, it's necessary for the action to be complete. In other words, there has to be a basis, first of all, at which the action is directed. Like if we scream and yell at somebody, let's say somebody is in the toilet, or we think somebody's in the toilet, the door is closed, and we scream and yell at them, you bloody idiot, why are you staying in there so long, why don't you come out? And, you know, we use all sorts of abusive language. Well, if it turns out that there was nobody inside the toilet, then obviously the negative action is not complete because there was nobody there to hear what we said and to be hurt by it. So there has to be a basis at which the action is done. If we shoot into a dark closet and there's nobody there, well, we haven't completed the action of killing, even though we might have had the intention to kill somebody that we thought was in the closet. Then the urge with which we do what we're doing has to be not mistaken in our recognition of what we were trying to do. In other words, we shouldn't have done something by mistake. Oh, I'm sorry, I meant to, I took this thing which I thought was mine. I took this coat, or I took this hat. I thought it was mine, but it turned out to be yours. If we did it by mistake like that, well then also it's not, the action isn't complete. Furthermore, we have to have the full intention of doing it and not by accident. If I step on somebody's foot by accident, that's, the action isn't so complete as if I purposely run over to the person and stamp on their foot on purpose. Those are two very different types of actions. So it's very different if we hit somebody with our car by accident, or if we actually aimed our car at a person on the sidewalk and drove it right into them. One is killing, one is an accident. The killing has, the murder has a definite result, whereas the accident doesn't necessarily have to have that. Also, one of the three poisonous attitudes has to be present, like, for instance, great anger or attachment or closed-mindedness. Like, for instance, if I if I scold my child out of love for the child to help them become a better person, well, that's not a negative action. Whereas if I yell at them with anger, then that becomes a very negative type of action. So again, it all depends. Also, the action involved must be that we actually do it. If we go to punch somebody and we miss, then the action isn't complete. We have to actually complete the action. And the action, I mean, it has to be done, and it has to reach a completion. In other words, for instance, if we yell at somebody, they have to understand what we said and feel hurt by it. So if we yell at somebody and it turns out that the person doesn't understand the language that we're speaking, then again, the act isn't completed because they have no idea of what we were saying and it has no effect on them. So all these things have to be complete in order for the action that we do to have its full results. And then the results that it has, there are going to be many results from actions. First, we're going to have a ripened result, which will be a new rebirth state. So from killing, for instance, and murdering, we could be reborn in one of the hell realms, or as a spirit that's tortured, all sorts of horrible things, or as an animal that is hunted by everybody else, or if we trap others and torture them, well, we could be reborn as the fish in the restaurant that's being there waiting for somebody to choose, that I'm going to eat you, and then we're thrown into a pot and boiled alive. I mean, that's not nice, is it? So that type of thing can result if we ourselves have acted cruelly towards others. If we, for instance, have taken that fish out and put it in the pot to cook, then we ourselves could very easily be reborn as that same type of fish, having the same type of thing happen to us, because whatever type of actions we do, whatever negativities we create, ultimately in the end, we ourselves are going to have to experience that. If we, for instance, have taken that fish out and put it in the pot to cook, then we ourselves could very easily be reborn as that same type of fish, having the same type of thing happen to us, because whatever type of actions we do, whatever negativities we create, ultimately in the end we ourselves are going to have to experience that. Then we have results that correspond to their cause, and this would be both in our experience and our instinctive behavior. So, for instance, from killing, then we ourselves will have, if we've shortened somebody else's lifespan, then we ourselves, let's say when we're born as a human again, eventually, because we've built up so many different types of potentials that when one has ripened and is finished, then others will come up, so we can be reborn as a human again after we're that fish. We will still experience, for instance, having a short life, having a great deal of sickness, as a result of having hurt others in the past, of having shortened their lifespan. And so when we ourselves experience a great deal of sickness, the reason for that is in the past lives, we ourselves have hurt the life force of others. And then in our instinct, we ourselves would be very naturally drawn to killing. From being a small child, we would be very sadistic, we would take pleasure in hurting others. Or from stealing, then we ourselves are going to be poor because we've taken away the riches and the things that others enjoy. We ourselves are going to be born in a poor family, or whatever money we have we're going to lose, or people are going to steal from us, these sort of things. And likewise, in terms of our experience, in terms of our instincts, we ourselves will instinctively be drawn to stealing from others, or from unwise sexual behavior. Our own wives and husbands are going to be unfaithful. We're not going to have good marriages. We're going to have divorce, these sort of things. And instinctively, we ourselves are going to be drawn to having extramarital affairs, these sort of things. The result is going to be similar to the cause. Then there's another result, which is the comprehensive result. And so the comprehensive result would be the result that tends to affect the whole place in which we are reborn, and that many people are going to experience collectively. So, for instance, from killing, from lowering the life force of others, we'll be reborn in a place which is always has no facilities to support the life of people. So, for instance, it'll be a country where there's a lot of war, or where the medicine doesn't cure people, where the medicine is very weak, the food is very weak and poor, these sort of things. There are many diseases. Or from stealing, we'll be reborn in a country which is very poor, in which everybody has poverty, and there's always a lot of thieves, this sort of thing. From lying, we'll be reborn in a country where everybody is dishonest. From using harsh language, we'll be reborn in a country in which everybody is rude and everybody is always abusing everybody else. So we have this comprehensive type of result. And these are the ways that in which our actions ripen, whether it's a positive or a negative action. Likewise, from being generous to others, helping others, then that will result in having a good type of rebirth, and having wealth ourselves because we've given to others, and having instinctively the instinct to be kind to others and help others. And comprehensive result would be the country itself is going to be very rich and have many opportunities. Or from helping the sick, helping the poor, then we ourselves are going to be healthy. We ourselves are going to receive help from others. We'll be in a country in which the help is available. All these things are similar to what we ourselves have done. Like Vajrasattva is one particular mantra practice in Buddhism. but we shouldn't think that it just happens magically by chanting a mantra. It's very important to have this complete with all the attitudes. So, for instance, we have to look at the past and openly admit to all the negative things that we've done in the past, that these things were wrong. So we have to be honest with ourselves and see in the past I've been cruel to this person, or I've been greedy or selfish, or I've hurt others, these sort of things, to review our lives and to openly admit when they've been wrong, and then to feel regret about it. Regret is quite different from guilt. Guilt is a strong identification with being a naughty child. Mommy and Daddy aren't going to like me. Whereas regret is quite different. It's like if I ate food that made me sick, I regret that I ate it. I don't feel guilty that I ate it. So we feel regret about the negative actions, and then we we set the promise that I'm going to try not to repeat them again. I mean, if we're going out and cheating people in our business and we just sit and chant a mantra, but we have no intentions of stopping cheating people, then how is that going to purify ourselves of our negativities? It's important to promise not to continue the negative action, and then to reaffirm the positive direction that we're going in, that we're working to try to overcome our limitations, realize our potential so we can help others the best. And then, with all of this complete, then doing the mantra practice and purification visualizations can work to purify ourselves of these negativities. It's like, as I was saying, you throw a ball up, it's going to land unless we catch it. And we can catch it and prevent and stop these negative things from ripening by following these various purification practices. But of course, the best thing is not to create any more negative potentials or reinforce negative tendencies and habits by in ourselves practicing this discrimination when an impulse comes to our head, to see, is this going to be positive or negative? What's going to happen if I act it out? And if it's going to be negative, and cause a lot of trouble, to restrain ourselves from doing this, because we know it's just something that will get us into difficulty. And then, through more and more familiarity with being positive, work to try to build up beneficial types of habits. Now, having listened to this, then we shouldn't just nod our heads, yes, yes. There was a story in a monastery. There was a Mongolian lama who had a servant, and he sent the servant out to buy some meat from the market. And so the servant boy went out, the young novice went out, and to buy the meat. And when he came back to this lama's house, a hawk came and stole the meat from his hand. And so when he got back to this Mongolian lama's house, the Mongolian lama said, "What happened to the meat?" And the boy said, "A hawk stole it." And the lama got very, very angry, and he said, "What house does this hawk live in?" Because obviously he didn't know the Tibetan word hawk, and he thought it was the name of some person. And so he said, "What house did he live in?" And so the boy explained, no, it's not a person. A hawk is a type of bird, and he explained it. And the lama said, "Oh, yes, I understand. A crow took it." And so like that, we shouldn't just say in our minds, "Oh, yes, I understand what you're talking about," but in fact have a completely different idea of thinking, for instance, like it was a crow and not a hawk. So it's important to try to keep in mind what karma is. It's not fate, it's not destiny, according to the Buddhist explanation, because if it were, then there's nothing we could do about it. But rather it's talking about the impulses that come to our head, and there always is something that we can do to change our karma, to change the impulses that come to our head, so that we can have more positive ones coming, not negative ones, so that we can be of more benefit to everyone. Any questions? The question is about actions and the reactions, the things that come from them. Can we see this as a whole? And this is very, very devious, because when we act in a certain way, let's say I'm very cruel to somebody, then that action occurs, the impulse comes to our head, and we act it out, and we act cruelly, and that builds up potential and habits, so that in the future, again, another impulse comes to our head to act cruelly again, and also for other people to be cruel to us. But we can see that when we act that again, then again it builds up a further potential for it to continue. And where did that first impulse come from for acting cruel? Well, that came from previous habits and previous potentials to act cruelly. And so in a certain sense, this is what's described as samsara in Buddhism. Samsara is uncontrollably recurring situations, and so they recur. We act in a certain destructive way, and we act in that way because we had been destructive before, and it continues to build up the causes for destructiveness to recur again. That's why when we think about it logically, there can be no beginning. But there can be an end, because it's like a bouncing ball. We can catch it, we can make it stop. When we say there's no beginning, it's not that we're avoiding the complexity, we're answering the complexity. The only logical conclusion is that there's no beginning, an absolute beginning. Point one, before which everything was non-existent and nothing, and then all of a sudden it starts, doesn't make any logical sense. Do animals come to human stage? Yes, animals can become humans, and humans can become animals. We've built up beginningless causes for many different types of rebirth, and so it's a matter of what is the most predominant, and particularly what is the most predominant thought at the time of death. With the case of animals, there's not much that they can do, but when the impulses that were the cause for them to have an animal rebirth, when that energy is finished, then previous tendencies, previous habits from lifetimes before that, before they were the animal, can ripen so that they can become a human in their next life.
How do they know to come to that stage?
How do they know to come to that stage? They don't. That's just it. It's an uncontrollably recurring situation. We don't have any control over how we're reborn at our level now. Animals don't. Most humans don't. The question is, what is the karma of someone who is, let's say, a slaughterer of chickens as their livelihood? And regardless of what reason he might give for being the slaughterer of chickens, that's going to result in a very terrible type of rebirth, probably as a chicken who's going to be killed by somebody else. The thing is that there's no excuse there in terms of saying that this is the only livelihood that they can have. Obviously, he can change his job. The thing is, with our livelihood, to try to have a livelihood which is beneficial for others, not to feel that we have to do something destructive just because our family had done that. Now, this is a situation. The question is, we've been taught in our schools to love God, King, and country, and what happens when we follow that and go into the army and we're ordered to go and kill in order to defend our country. Now, there are several situations here. The thing that is reminiscent is the one of the story that I told of the Buddha killing the oarsmen in order to save the lives of the 500 merchants. If we are defending others And this is true. I mean, it's not just some falsehood that we don't believe in, or that's not really the case. But if that's true, then, as I was saying, the motivation the positive motivation can result in happiness, but the negative action of killing is still something which is negative. And so, although we might be decorated as a hero as a result of defending the nation from actually killing others, we ourselves might have gotten shot in the leg. We might have all sorts of negative things that can happen from that. But again, the strength of what ripens is going to be determined by all these factors that I described. And so if we did it without a full motivation, I mean, we didn't want to kill, we didn't feel hatred for the other person, but we were forced to do it, then that's not as strong as if we went out there and screaming and yelling and taking delight in smashing everybody's head into little bits and torturing them and doing all sorts of nasty things. So it depends on the motivation, depends on the force, but in any case, the action of killing itself is negative. But the motivation, as you say, to defend the country, and if specifically it really is for helping others, then that could be the thing, that would be the thing that results in being considered a hero. From the positive motivation, you get a positive result. From the negative action of killing, you get a negative result, but the force of the positive motivation can lessen the severity of the negative thing that we experience from the negative action. Like the Buddha getting a splinter from killing this oarsman. In a sense that if we have this situation of the chicken being slaughtered by me, there has to be some reason why that particular mind stream was reborn as that chicken who happened to be in my household or wherever that I slaughtered the chicken. So there has to be some connection, definitely. But again, it doesn't mean that it's fate that it inevitably has to be slaughtered. In other words, that connection is there, but from the way, if we understand it as an impulse, then I have the choice whether to act it out or not. If I think of it as it's God's will, then I just slaughter it.
Taking that further, are we saying that for every negative action someone does in this life, is the result of a previous consequence?
Right.
Is that, or can a person's, the way he lives his life now, and the way, let's say now, people who are here, for example, who are perhaps going into some spiritual kind of practice, now, faced with a particular situation, because they've gone through the spiritual practice, they may take a more positive action rather than negative action. Another person will take a negative action. So therefore, is it necessarily everything a person does today negative? And the result of previous consequence, or is it present thought, present character, present upbringing?
Well, both. Everything that anybody does, whether positive or negative, is a result of tendencies and habits and potentials built up in past lives. Now, in this particular life, the situation is going to provide the circumstances. Like if, for instance, we have 100, let's say not 100, let's say 3 or 5 possibilities of what could happen or what we can do, then the circumstances now in this lifetime and the fact that there's the center here and so on can provide the circumstances for one of those possibilities to ripen. If that circumstance wasn't there, then although that possibility would be there in our mind stream, it couldn't ripen now. It would ripen, let's say, a different lifetime or something else. What is interesting about the Buddhist idea of karma is that it's neither predetermination nor is it total free will. Those are two extremes, and Buddhism is always a middle path. If it's predetermination, then we have no choice. Our life is just acting out a script that's already been chosen, already been written. If it's total free will, then that means that I could do anything. I could flap my arms now and fly out of this room. Now, obviously, it's not that. We can only do certain things which are possible, other things are impossible, and out of those things which are possible, whichever one we choose, it's not predetermined, but whichever one we choose, there's going to be a reason in the past for.
So in other words, whatever we do this life,
right?
We have the ability to not to be sort of determined by iron will or past action.
Right.
We can, in fact, by our own actions, determine what we want to do.
Right. Exactly. That's how we can.
Okay, but the question is, and therefore, it appears that therefore certain things are preconditioned by iron will, so to speak. Would birth be one? Is that a preconditioned thing that is like an iron will, iron chain? You have to go, you go at a particular point of time, and birth. And what about one other thing? What about marriage? Or other procreation? Is this an iron will? I mean, kind of a situation where this particular child, suppose one is going to be born anyhow. Or is it just, this free will and a lot of other, your own determinants coming in?
Well, birth and death are things which are, again, compulsive. We compulsively grasp for a body to continue to support ourselves. And when we're about to die, we continue to grasp onto our body for it to continue. And when we see that it's not going to continue in the last moments, we find that we realize it's not going to support us any longer, then we grasp for another body to continue. And it's like a desperate person drowning in a lake. They don't really, they don't differentiate. Just anything that comes along, they'll grab onto in order to support themselves. So likewise, when we die, then that grasping to continue with the body and to continue to exist causes us to grasp at any, let's say if we're going to be a human, a sperm, an egg, or whatever, to continue to exist. Now, that can be, depending on what type of attitudes we have at the time of death, will affect which family we're going to be reborn in, and so on. But if that, such a family is not available, well, there'll be another family, another situation. It's not that it's inevitable that this particular person be reborn definitely in this family at that time. And what we want to do is get out of the compulsiveness of just grasping for any type of rebirth based on whatever disturbing thoughts go through our mind and impulses, but rather we want to get to the point of becoming free from all of this and eventually reach the point where we can choose what type of family, what type of rebirth we'll have, so that we can appear in whatever way is going to allow us to be of most benefit to others.
Is the marriage of one person to another predetermined?
No. Marriage of one person to another is not predetermined. Well, no, it's not chance. There's causes. I mean, it's like what I was saying. There are causes for things. That doesn't mean that it's predetermined, that it's fate. Because it's the same thing with the example of the ball. You throw a ball up in the air, it'll come down. You can predict that, let's say from astrology and so on. You can predict a certain marriage will take place, but you can catch that ball. You have a choice. You don't have to marry. I mean, if you decide not to marry, what's going to happen? I mean, is somebody going to capture you and tie you down and force you to marry? That doesn't happen. At least I don't think it does. Maybe some places it does. Yes?
Saying that when a human being dies, it lasts for the next life.
Right.
Will that apply to when animals die? They will accept another life.
Yes.
So with all the living beings around, so when a human being dies, the chances of being born as a human being is very slim.
That's right. That's exactly right. When a human being dies, the chances to be born as a human being is quite slim. Even though the human beings, the population seems to be increasing, The explanation is that actually the gods in the god realms are falling. And so there are more of them going downhill into being humans. And if we look at the number of insects in the world, they're certainly increasing far more than the humans. And so the chances are much stronger of being reborn in a worse state. And especially that's true if we look at all the destructive actions that people do in the world. So it's very rare that people act in a constructive way, which are going to bring about the causes for a human rebirth. And with all the opportunities to continue with spiritual growth, spiritual help, that's why it's so important to engage in social help like people here do in terms of working with old people, sick people, and so on, being generous towards them. This builds up all the causes for being reborn as a human being with all the opportunities for being in good health, good position, so that we can continue to grow spiritually and help others. So it's very good.
You talked about hell realms,
right,
and ghosts and happy land.
Right.
Give the Buddhism view of Nibbana.
Well, the Tibetan Buddhist viewpoint of the different realms, you see, I'm a translator, and so one of the things that I've seen is that there's a lot of misconception or strange ideas come about because of a lot of the English words which are used to speak about these different realms or to speak about various things. So I tend to try to use a little bit different ideas or different terms. When we speak about the hell realms, what I would rather, because a lot of people react very negatively towards that. We've heard about the hells in this religion or that religion. I don't want to hear about that anymore. But rather, the connotation of the Sanskrit word for it is a joyless realm, a place where there's no happiness. And the connotation of the Tibetan is that it's difficult to get out of, and so trapped. And so I speak of trapped beings in the joyless realms. So it's a state that a mind stream can experience, of being trapped in a joyless situation. The ghost realm is speaking in terms of clutching ghosts. It's a type of spirit that is completely clutching and grasping for, like when something is haunting something, it's so attached to it that it just grasps onto it and doesn't want to let go. This type of clutching idea. This is...
you mentioned about the clutching idea.
Right.
You're talking about this, these being physical or some sort of different entities, or you're talking about purely a state of mind?
Well, no, what we're talking about is, first of all, a state of mind which then is experienced in some physical form. Now, I'm not saying, and Buddhism never says that all of these are human experiences. It says that there can be leftovers from these rebirths in a human life. And so in a human life, we can have a leftover from a joyless realm life, in terms of being joyless, or in a human life, we can have a leftover of being miserly and clutching. But prior to that, there was an actual rebirth in that actual form. Now, of course, it says these are invisible. We can't see them. And so we shouldn't, be surprised when we say that, well, but I've never seen them. Of course we can't see them. But it's now where they're actually located and so forth. In some of the texts, they do give the description of where they're located. But again, whether we take that literally or not, that's open to discussion. But in any case, when we have a mind stream, well, our mind stream now is taking on a human form. In prior lives, that would have experienced the state of mind of being in a joyless realm or a clutching ghost, and, in some sort of physical situation. So we have those, we have animal, but animal, again, a lot of people have a very strange idea of animals. We think of animals as my pet dog, my pet pussycat, Bambi, from Walt Disney, something like that, and we think it's not so bad. But if we use a creeping creature, it's a way to translate it, well, that's more the connotation. It's something that walks bent over. And so if we think in terms of being reborn as a cockroach or a beetle, well, nobody wants that. So there's this type of realm. There's the human realm. Then for the God realms, the state of mind that it's talking about, because again, God's, gives us all sorts of other connotations. I think the word divine in English is better, because I use divine in the sense that it's used in the fashion world. Like in Vogue magazine, it's, oh, this is so divine, darling. What a divine dress. What a divine party. What a divine food that we have. It's completely mindless. And this is the connotation that we want to have of it. It's very lovely, very nice, but completely mindless. No thinking going on, like in this type of divine situation. So we have divine beings living in the divine realms, very lovely, but nothing's happening. And then we have the type of mentality that is like the people who read Vogue magazine and want to be like the people in it. So the would-be divine, those would be the anti-gods, the asuras. These are the ones who would be like them, but aren't. And so again, these will have an actual physical situation, not human. But to describe it, the emphasis is always on what is the state of mind in these different realms. And so that would be the predominant states of mind. That's why the question is, if all our negative actions come from prior impulses, from destructive actions, then if we want to act in a constructive way, then what happens, don't we need prior impulses for that as well? And that's true. That's why we speak in terms of beginningless lives. If we've had beginningless lives, then in fact we have impulses for just about everything. If that's the case, it's a matter of, you see, certain impulses will come to our head, but we can choose which one we're going to follow, and we do what's called meditation. Meditation means building up a beneficial habit. And so it's taking certain impulses that we can see, even if they're weak, we can see that this is going to be positive. Or even if those impulses don't come to our head because of circumstances of being in a spiritual group or reading a book or something, we can learn and say, hey, this would be very beneficial if I could learn to be more calm, if I could learn to be more kind, more giving, more loving, and then I learn a technique of how to do it, and then I actually try to build it up as a beneficial habit. This is what meditation is. And by building it up, by repeating it and so on, this is going to make it stronger and stronger so that the positive impulses will have more energy and come up more strongly in our mind. So it's a matter of trying to take control of the situation and be creative and try to bring about the causes for the positive impulses to come on much more strongly. The question is, if somebody is in a coma and they can't be revived and they're on a life support system and the doctor comes along and says, you want to continue this on the life support system or not? What is the karma involved with that? Well, that's a little bit tough, that type of question, because it depends on the motivation, really. If the motivation is that I can't be bothered with the expense and all the, bother and fuss of continuing to come to the hospital and see this relative of mine, let's get it over with so that we can get on with our lives, then that obviously is not a very good motivation, is it? And that would be a negative act. If the motivation is one of saying that this person's lifespan is finished and There's no reason to try to force it and so on. If there's absolutely no hope, then that's something different. You see, it really has to depend on the situation. Also, obviously, this person has the karma for that life support system to have been used in the first place. Of course, it's not used on everybody. So there might be some reason that's there as well. It's not an easy situation to make a decision in. It obviously would be much better if a person themselves says, if I'm going to be severely sick, I want to be just left to die a natural death and don't unnaturally prolong my life. In that case, then if we follow their wishes, that's something which is not creating any negative karma at all. The question is, in some scriptures, it speaks about how a guru can take away the negative karma of the disciples. What's going on in that situation? Well, this is true not only with the guru and disciple, but it could be between two people as well. And it's the mechanism that's involved in healing, for instance. And in the Buddhist explanation, it says that this type of thing can happen only if there's a very strong karmic connection between the two individuals for it to happen. Otherwise, it won't work. And so it's not a matter of taking away the karma of somebody else. It's a matter of activating a different karma for a person to be able to heal somebody else or to remove the negativities from them. That's why a great deal of Buddhist practice is done in terms of developing the wish. May I be able to take on everybody else's sicknesses and difficulties, and may I be able to give them happiness. If we practice doing that, thinking that, of feeling that, and of wishing that towards everybody, then we'll be able to build up the causes and the connections which will allow for it to actually work. And it's important with that to have the courage and the bravery to feel that I really want to take on their sickness, and not to just, be pretending about it. There's a story of somebody who was practicing this. There was an old woman whose husband had a terrible sickness, and she was standing over the husband and saying, "May your sickness come on me, may your sickness come on me." And it was sunset, and the window was open, and outside there was a donkey, and the donkey had a feed bag on, one of these bags that they hang over the head for them to eat from. And it was sunset, so the light wasn't very good, and this donkey with the feed bag stuck its head through the window. And the old woman thought that it was the evil spirit that was causing the sickness to her husband, and she looked up on it, and it got very, very frightened, and she said, "Get him, not me, him." And so, we should sincerely wish that, the sickness actually does come on us when we have this thought to cure others. It's only then, by the power of it being completely selfless, that we'll have the ability to heal. The question is, when we look at the description of the world ages, we have 4 world ages, and now we're in the Kali Yuga, the age of deterioration, where a lot of negativities are happening. This description is found in Hinduism. We have similar type of things found in some of the Buddhist teachings, particularly in Kala Chakra. One of the things with that is, of course, that in the Buddhist way of describing it, it goes through cycles, so those 4 ages are going to repeat. I think we have this in Hinduism as well. Now, the only difference is going to be in the prediction of the number of years in each of the ages, but that really is not so important. Predictions are a way of looking at things like, again, the example is throwing the ball up in the air. Throw a ball up in the air, and we can predict that it's going to come down unless somebody catches it. And so looking at the general karma, the general energy and impulses of all living beings, then we can predict that things are going to go through the 4 yugas, or the 4 ages. That doesn't mean, though, that it's absolutely predetermined, but chances are pretty good that it's going to go through those phases. For the person who eats the actions, remember one of the laws is that the results are going to be similar to the action. And so if we eat meat without actually killing it ourselves, like in the first 2 examples, then the consequence of that is that we ourselves are going to be eaten. So in some life, we ourselves will be reborn as an animal that's eaten by others. In fact, that's the consequence, that's the inevitability of any rebirth as an animal. Animals are killed by others and eaten, either by other animals, by insects, and so that's the consequence of just eating meat without actually killing it ourselves. The consequence of either killing it ourselves or ordering somebody else to kill it is that we ourselves will be killed at some time or slaughtered. So the action and the result are always similar. In a culture in which they do eat meat because they don't have any other food resources, which we have in many cultures in the world, you can look not only in the examples that you used, but the Eskimos or in Tibet, then what they try to do is to kill in a compassionate type of way. In other words, it's looking at the animal, trying to kill it with the least amount of pain, saying prayers for the next life of the animal, showing thanks and appreciation to the animal for giving their lives in order to support our human lives, and from the Buddhist point of view, then being willing to take on the negative consequences of that, but offsetting it with the positive thing of being kind to the animal and wishing it well.